can you confirm that you're seeing my presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Wagner Luiz Schmidt Shibashi. I am a PhD student at the São Paulo State University. Also, I am part of the Verkhina. I don't know if this is the way we pronounce it. I do not speak Russian, sorry, but other members of our group speak it. I am a member of the Verkhina Cultural Historical Theory Research Group here in Brazil. And this is my email if anybody wants to contact me. And my presentation is about the difficulties in the study and teaching of Vygotsky's cultural historical theory in Brazil. So, sorry in advance because I maybe do some provocations, but I in any way want to be disrespectful for any researcher and colleague. So I like to say that Vygotsky is kind of a distinguished unknown. Like everybody knows Vygotsky, like they heard about the name, they even heard about ZPD, but nobody really knows Vygotsky. And more importantly, most people don't really read Vygotsky. They know, sometimes they read the commentators or some abstracts, but not Vygotsky. And most people think of Vygotsky just as a kind of education thinker. And many people don't think that Vygotsky is even at the field of psychology. So sometimes when I will give lectures about Vygotsky, or I say that I am a Vygotskian, among psychologists, they ask, but is Vygotsky a psychologist? So, and many people see Vygotsky as a kind of social constructivist, social cognitivist, but rarely as a Marxist or even more as a Soviet psychologist. So we have big debates about Vygotsky here. So even the name of his theory is very controversial. We have done some researches pointing out like 10 different names for his theory. And this was, we had no like basis for a concrete name for his theory until last year here in Brazil, when there was a translation of a text that Vygotsky himself called his theory cultural historical theory. And people usually refer to Vygotsky as related to CHAT, cultural historical activity theory, but talking about CPD, talking about mediation, but rarely making references to units of analysis or even higher mental functions. So I want to bring here that the science are made by real men in a given political time and space, not in the vacuum. And this great man account of science is good for liberalism, is good for capitalism, and it is good in our bourgeois academia, but it is not good for good scientific practice. So very, very quickly, what is the core of Vygotsky for me is the use of units of analysis as the dialectical materialistic core of his methodology, his theory, with different objects demanding, so the objects demand the methodology. The theory is created by the material. And so these objects demanding a different unit of analysis. And Vygotsky is bring this in the first chapter of Thinking and Speech and then the foundations of pedology. And this has to do with the totality idea that this movement in time, this dialectical movement in time that gives us this plus in the way that the sum, the totality is more than the sum of its parts. There is a qualitative change. So, in order to understand a little bit more about the implications of this, I have to talk a little bit about the laws here in Brazil. So for work to be included in the syllabus of a classroom, of a college, a psychology course, this book have to be present in the college's library. And there have to be some number of books. So if a book is not available for the college to buy, the college cannot put that work in the syllabus, okay? Even if it's available online. And the out-of-print works makes Vygotsky availability in the colleges very, very difficult. And another question is related to my idea of the prestigious unknown, is that we have few works of Vygotsky translated here in Brazil, and some of them are already out of print. So we can see here that we started to have Vygotsky here in 1984 with Mind and Society, and then in 1986 with Thought and Language. On 88, we have the translation of one text of Vygotsky, included in a book with texts also from Luria and Leontiev. In 1998, we had like some selection of materials from volumes 2 and 3 of the Russian collected works. This is the counting from the Russian version, but I believe that they were translated from the English version. So we can see that we had a jump of a decade between publishing and no direct translation from Russian. In 1999, we had the monography of Vygotsky about Hamlet, and also a book called Teoria e Método em Psicologia, that is the equivalent of volume 1 of collected works. The translation is not good of this work, and it's out of print, and it costs a lot. Even used now, it costs a lot of money here in Brazil. And the 2000, we have the Psychology of Art, Vygotsky's thesis. It is also out of print. And here is a curiosity. On 2001, we had the translation of Thinking Speech. But our Thinking Speech is a translation of the 1934 version that was reprinted in Russia on the year 2000. It is not the same source, the volume, the Russian version of the 50s that contains some changes, and that was the base for the translations in Spanish and English. So we have a very good translation of Thinking Speech. In 2001, we have educational psychology, Psicologia Pedagógica, but directly from Russian, but with 2 extra chapters, and we don't know why. And we have another jump in publication. So only in 2009, we will have another publication with Imagination and Creativity, translated by Zoya Prestes. This book was also out of print for a long time, but I think 3 or 4 years ago, Zoya Prestes published again this book in another publisher. And we have another jump in time, and we have Foundations of Pedology, translated also by Zoya Prestes. But a curiosity, she includes Hudinova critics to Vygotsky in this book. So we can see that the publication history of Vygotsky in Brazil is very, very, very complicated. And this year we have another translation from Zoya Prestes, and with some texts also translated directly from Russian. So here in Brazil, we have a plethora, many works about Vygotsky, many commentators, many papers. But Vygotsky himself is not so popular. Vygotsky, and we can see this by the publication of his books. We don't have even the collected works, and we have indirect publications, indirect translations, I'm sorry, and this complicated things a lot. Another thing is that research from our research group almost a decade ago, and also by Zoya Prestes, we can see that Thought and Language and Mind in Society are the most quoted works. And they are the works that are present in most colleges. When they have Vygotsky, they only have these two works. And these works, they have a huge historical relevance. They were very important to spread Vygotsky's ideas, but they are very controversial works right now because we have better translations. The difference of the volume of pages between Thought and Language and Thinking and Speech is like, Thinking and Speech is the double of your volume of pages. So this shows how much the work was changed. And Mind and Society also is a collection of parts of various texts from Vygotsky. So this creates some problems. And related to this, the problem of these two works, we have another problems, like most works were translated from the English version. And we know the influence of the Cold War, and we know that there is some anti-Marxism in this. So we have like some cuts and some censorship and translation. And indirect translations always have problems. Even if the translator is very good, we'll lose something in an indirect translation. And for example, we have the Mind Society and Thought and Language and Thinking Speech. We have the same passage from the original Thinking Speech defining ZPD. And all these three are different. So it's no wonder that people don't have a clear definition of ZPD. It is, of course, the concept is a very complicated concept. There are other works talking about ZPD, but this difference on translation does not help. In a 2010 translation of the text on the problem of the environment, we had refraction translated as reflection. Zoya Prestes corrected this in the 2018 version, but anyway, it's a problem. But I believe that at least we have vivencia for Perigivani. It is better than lived experience, and so is a closer translation. So what happens is that, for example, this is mostly related to teaching, but we also have problems on research. So what is a Vygotskian research depends on who you ask for, because many researchers just quote Vygotsky to validate some argument, like a stamp, like, oh, this is good because Vygotsky said something similar. And many times, Vygotsky is stripped from Marxism, and his commitment to the Soviet project. So I think that we have to look at our own history and our field also in a Marxist way. Like we have to comprehend that how this works comes to us, the ideological and political influences that the publications, the translation, and the teaching and the research have. We do not live in a bubble, and we live in a political society. So we are political beings, we are social beings, and this is the core of Vygotsky's ideas and Marx ideas. So I believe that we have a double project. One project of returning to Vygotsky's works, but at the same time, I don't believe that we will know all of the way that Vygotsky thought, but we can try like to dig this, like the archival revolution that Zavashneva and Ionistic and Van der Veer were doing. That was great. But we also have to continue and advancing his research program, like the problem of emotions that is clearly unfinished. Revisit the great story of development. Vygotsky himself said he was not happy with the result presented in the book The Ape, the Primitive, and the Child. Psychology for social change, for political change, and so on. So I thought I brought this about the Brazilian situation, but I think this can make teachers and scholars from another countries to think about, okay, what are the questions that arise from the publications, how we teach Vygotsky, how we study Vygotsky, and so on. So thank you very much. And here are some of my references. Thank you.
Was made by Adriana Martinez. She said, could we understand Perigivani as similar of the concept of drama? Because drama is a complex event moment in the psychology activities. So I understand these questions. It's for Professor Wagner. Can you answer, Wagner, please?
Yeah, okay, but I think Bruce can also contribute because Bruce is researching Perigivani also. Well, for me, this relationship is clear because of the 1932 text on the problem of the creative work of the actor, where Vygotsky very clearly proposes that emotions is a part of psychological system and is developed as a higher mental function. I think that he did not put this relationship more directly because he died. So when he formulates the concept of Perigivani and on the problem of environment from 1934, I think, that was just translated in English by Nikolai Veresov and so on foundations of pedology. I think he did not put this very clearly because when he were writing about emotions, he did not finish. So he made the review, the critical review of theory of emotions. And when he was going to continue and propose his theory of emotions, he died. So we have to continue this. And unfortunately, English does not have a very good translation for Perigivani. On my research on our role-playing games, I translated Perigivani as cognitive and emotional developmental experiences. So it became a monstrous translation. But in both Portuguese, my native language, and Spanish, translators are using vivência. And in these languages, we have experience, that is experiência, that's more close to the Russian word oipit, and perigivani is more close to vivência. I hope that I answered. I don't know if Bruce also wants to complement.
Please, Professor Bruce, excuse me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it was Andy London who drew the comparison of the thinking of perigivani as the drama of everyday life. And so I think there's a lot of connection between this notion of perigivani and drama and how we make sense of those things. And consider, theorizing perigivani as something that is ongoing and always with us, and that part of the work that my group is considering is to look at what is, if perigivani is this ongoing and occurring process, how do we develop an ontology of moments that help us consider, what are those particular experiences that seem attenuated or especially impactful in terms of people's becoming and developmental trajectories.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions.
I wanted to just make a quick question for Bruce. Bruce, so if I understood correctly, because this was a question that I had on my own research. So to define what moments on your data are moments of perigivani, you asked the help of your research subjects, just to say, to the persons that were participating in the research, right? I understood correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. And that particularly, I think we see that in the examples from my colleagues Ryan and Nikki, where that's a deliberate part of data collection, is asking participants to share experiences, texts, other semiotic materials that they consider particularly important, and that's what we bring into the research and data collection, is by having that dialogue with participants. And
that's good to know, because we reached the same conclusion, but we didn't know each other, because I was also looking for perigivani in game experiences, so I was recording the group. And at the end of the section, I asked them, like, okay, what was important for you in this game, and so on. So that was the way that I selected, okay, maybe this was perigivani. Thank you very much.
Okay, Bruce, there are one more question about the translations of the term perigivani. The person, Victoria, said, interesting use of vivência like perigivani. How do the translations compare? Can you?
In terms of vivencia in perigivani, I think that question was for Wagner. Because and I also think he's kind of touched on some of the difficulties of translation, especially into English, and that there isn't a particular word or phrase that necessarily translates quite well. But if Wagner wants to take that, and I think he responded a little bit to that question in the chat, but if you wanted to share that too, you can go ahead.
Okay. Professor Anderson, do you want to talk? Do you want to say something for us about this question or other questions?
I didn't listen to the question.
Ok, não, estou perguntando se você quer falar alguma coisa sobre essa questão ou sobre outra questão, complementar a sua fala.
About perigivani? Sobre a Perijivani, a vivência? Eu não ouvi o que foi falado anteriormente, porque o meu computador começou a travar.
Okay. Okay, we have no other questions, no more questions. If some professor, any professor want to talk, complement his presentation, that's the moment. We still have 10 minutes.
Herculano, I would like to talk about Perijivani because I read some works made by Professor, I forgot her name, but Perijivani can be treated as an analytical unit of analysis between the subjective dimension and the objective dimension. What is maybe it's a wrong knowledge about Perijivani, because in socio-historical approach we treat the human being and the ambient, the objectivity as a unit, because it's the purpose, but Perijivani can be understood as a unit of analysis between the subjective and the feelings, sensations, emotions that emerge from the relation of the subjectivity and the objectivity. I guess it's something like that.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on your comment. So on this now it's very popular text, it was first translated by Valsiner and van der Veer in English in the 90s, and but now we are gaining all this discussion on Perijivani. But Vygotsky, he says in the first lesson on the problem of environment, and yeah, Gisele Toassa is a member of my research group, Vershna. So I am talking with her a lot, and she done a lot of research on Vivência and Perijivani. So for me, it's very clear that for Vygotsky, Perijivani is the unit of analysis of consciousness, of conscience. So you are right. He does not directly talk about subjectivity, but well, and personality and environment. It's the dialectical totality of personality that Vygotsky understands as the story of cultural development of the person. So it's not like some inborn, intricate characteristics that we have sometimes in psychology. Oh, we were born with this personality. So you only understand Perijivani if you understand the story of development of that person, and also understands the environment that person is at that moment. You cannot separate them, as you very well proposed. And I think this is where our speech is connected, because as Professor Herculano pointed, not many people that use Vygotsky has this view of we need to find a totality, a dialectical, materialistic unit of analysis, right? So yeah, I think this is the point. And this is where many people get lost in the meanings of Perijivani, because they are chasing a wild rabbit of concept. But Vygotsky, when he talks about Perijivani, he gives a concrete example of the 3 children that have an alcoholic mother. So these 3 children are on the very same environment, with the very same mother, but their Perijivani of their relationship to that mother is very different, because they have, even growing up with the same mother and so on, they have different stories of development, they have different personalities, so they give a different meaning and have a different consciousness about what's going on. So I think this is the joining point of our papers.
Okay. I agree. Leticia said, I just want to say that I agree with the Wagner's explanation. There is not a direct relation made by Vygotsky between Perjivani and drama, but some authors comprehend these relations considering the drama in Vygotsky the ori of development. Okay. Victoria Bensey, do you want to say something for us?
Thank you. I think it's just, I just find it an interesting concept and how people interpret it, because it is interpreted in different ways. Vygotsky wrote about Perezvanye in different ways at the start of his research and at the end towards his death. And I just found it interesting when you referred to how it's defined in Spanish or Portuguese. And I wondered whether that might provoke a different way of thinking about Perezvanye, hence my original question. I think for me and how I've used the term, it's about those experiences that people might have in their lives. So it's mediated by their history, by their culture, by society, and by the emotions evoked through their interactions within the environment. But I'm always open to conversation. I find the whole concept very, very interesting. Is it a concept indeed, or is it a phenomenon? So that was what my question was all about.
I want to comment on this. I think your comment is very interesting because it points out to the heart of Vygotsky's theory. He says that, okay, what brings the higher mental functions together is language. But language is not the same for everybody. So you're a native English speaker. I am a native Portuguese speaker. So this language makes us formulate the concepts, give the meanings. So yeah, so of course we have different points of view of Perjivani because we have different languages, different formations, and we are social beings. So this is a very, very interesting discussion, I think, right? It's a very interesting.
Very. Okay, no more questions, no more some considerations. Can we finish?
We have 3 minutes to talk more if you want.
Please. Okay. Thank you very much for everyone. The presentations are very interesting. I hope we can find us in around this Congress or personally closer to talk about our research questions. Thank you. And
thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Goodbye. See you soon, I hope.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.